What is up, guys? It is Craig here. I am in DC. I just finished round one of the Cherry Blossom Classic. I was playing down. Actually, let's pull this up. I was playing on board three here against Matthew Diao, who is a 1971, more than 400 points lower rated, so definitely was expected to win a very large percentage of the time, and I did with black. I have not looked at the engine yet, so I'm just going to talk a bunch of garbage, 2400 net level analysis. I'm gonna go through the game, just tell you my thoughts after the game, my thoughts during the game, all of that good stuff. What I think are the critical lines where I think my opponent went wrong, where I think maybe I went wrong, even though I won. And then after that, we'll let the 3600 level engine tell us what's actually up. So without further ado, we are black here. D4 E6, C4 B6. I play everything against D4. I play the Turash. I play Knight F6 B6. I play the Gruenfeld. I play Queen's Gambit Declined. I've played the Benoni before. I play shit. I've played Knight A6 before. I play what else do I play? I play D4 G6. My system Bishop G7 E6 Knight E7. The system that I more or less invented. Um, I play the triangle system. Yeah, anyway, against D4, like my opponent told me basically he gave up preparing just because half an hour before the round he saw I play everything. So he's just like, well, I'm just gonna play D4 and just see what happens. C4 B6. I saw that he was mainly just like a standard D4 C4 Knight C3 player. So I was expecting something like, either this, and I was gonna get some sort of Knight F6 followed by D5, standard position, or A3 here, which actually was the opening that came from Fascinating Chess Positions 1, if you want to look at that series. And I was going to go here, Knight F6, D5, G6. And actually, if you want to take a quick look at how we get the position from the Fascinating Chess Positions 1, that would be E4 D6, Knight F3, Bishop G7, Bishop D3. Why would you go Queen D3? Bishop D3, Castle, Castles, Rook E8, and Knight D4. Here, we've transposed to Fascinating Chess Positions 1, where basically the move was A6, if you remember from that. Or probably you don't remember, because why would you have watched that unless you're one of my close friends? Then you probably don't even know what the position is anyway, because maybe you don't play. Anyway. My opponent slightly surprised me by playing Knight F3 here, because I mean, still not a surprise, right? So Knight F3, Bishop B7. He can still go Knight C3. This is what I expect. Slightly surprises me by going G3 here, because he's not a Catalan player. I haven't seen that he plays Catalan. And so I was thinking, like, I could go Knight F6 and we transpose it to Queen's Indian, where he's played G3. Um, but that's not the style that I was playing for. And actually, after the game, my opponent told me, like, he plays G3 Queen's Indian. But, more to the point for winning chances is this move Bishop D4 check, Bishop D2. Played this move Bishop F3. One of my good friends has told me that C5 equalizes here. But I remember looking at it and being like, yeah, maybe it equalizes, but in the spirit of playing for a win, like I didn't really, I wasn't too impressed, let's say. Like in terms of playing for a win, Bishop takes F3 is probably objectively slightly worse move, but I mean, it gets you like the imbalance that you want. So takes. Queen takes D2 makes the most sense because this knight wants to come to C3. And here, I could not remember my line. Like, I knew the ideas behind my line, but I could not remember whether I wanted this knight on E7 or F6 and whether to go D5 here or not, or like what the move was. So actually, I'm going to look at my line real quick. I can find it. It's under Craig 1 E6 for black. Probably already passed it a million times. I just don't see it. Yep, there we go. Craig 1 E6. And this is my opening file. B6. We see this knight F3, G3, bishop B4 check. I'm still like, this is like all new to, well, I mean, it's not new to me, but I don't know actually what is correct yet. So this is possible. So bishop F3 as my main line. I have knight F6 as my main line. Okay. I say D5. Engine eval is very high. Actually, during this game, I started understanding why the engine eval is so high here. So I do understand the position relatively well. It's just like the C pawn's weak and the D pawn's not actually too weak. And bishop G2 F4, like H4, H5 comes, like white's actually doing quite well. Apparently F4 is not a move white wants to play, but H4 is. Um, yeah, and apparently white's doing quite well here, which I actually started to appreciate during the game because I don't really have a plan here. Like I can never push C5. I mean, I can, but it's not going to be great for me. Like I'm just going to be the one hoping for quality because I have less pieces and I have hanging pawns in the center. And so okay, apparently knight f6 is my main move. I have knight e7. Interesting move. And I was worried about this move d5. But I also reckon that if my opponent did not play d5, like I go d5 myself, and I am a happy camper. But here, castles, castles. Yeah, some sort of Benoni position. My knight on e7 doesn't necessarily belong, but okay. So this is the main line. Understandable. Bishop g2 is not too challenging. Okay, so now it's on f6 and c6. Something good to remember for next time. And yeah, okay, this is actually very similar to the position I got in the game. So something like that. I'm just trying to look at my opening files. Okay, so man, actually, yeah, no, this is actually very. This is the structure that we got in the game more or less. But I was just trying to figure out where my knight belongs in order for this to happen, and I think I chose wrong. But knight c3, castles d5, c6. Very interesting. And this is, I mean, equal, but white really has nothing to worry about here. G5, kind of a cool move. Anyway, so I have D5 here. And I remember I take with the knight, and then bishop D3 is the best move. And then like H4 down the road. Okay, I don't remember knight E7. That's kind of nuts. I did appreciate during the game that this structure with these minor pieces was better for white. Just because my knight sucks. The D4 pawn's adequately defended, and white has queenside pressure. Okay. Um, okay, interesting. So for next time, I need to remember knights on f6 and c6 is just good enough. During the game, I played this move, knight e7. My opponent reacted, I think, quite poorly with bishop g2, which is kind of just like I think my opponent's main problem this game was that we got a very strategic position, and instead of understanding the position deeply and really playing deeper moves that catered to the position. My opponent just started drifting by playing moves that were like okay, but not great, such as Bishop G2 here. It's like, yeah, this move doesn't lose, but it's really not what the position demands. And the position demands that, okay, well, my idea here is I want to go D5. And after D5, this pawn on D4 is going to be a weakness. And so the question is, if White can play D5, he should. And I think he can. As I mean, I know he can because that's the move in my mind. And I forget exactly what I was going to play. I think E5 was on my mind. Something like Bishop G2 castles. Castles, maybe Knight G6 here. And I can go for something like D6, Knight D7. I didn't think this would be too bad. Something like F5, F5, F4 in the air, potentially. I don't know if that weakens E4 too much. At least I can play F5 without worrying too much. And then, just see where we go from there. I wonder if something like F4 here makes sense. Takes, queen takes. But castle, knight g6, d6, knight d7. I really didn't see that this position was so bad for me. I figured like, d5. Worst case, I don't have to go e5 if I see something wrong with it. But right now, I don't particularly see too much. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if I'm worse here. But I don't think this is it. Like, now I have knight d4 coming. Like, this has to be at least okay for me. Um, Otherwise, like, I don't know, knight g6, say knight c3. Honestly, like I can see white having some pressure here. It can go b4, a4, a5, maybe just b4, c5. So something like d6, let's say b4. Okay, there's some pressure on the queen side, but there's I just don't see myself being that. I mean, h4 is a possibility, h5, h6. Yeah, maybe I don't know, something like this. But at the very least, I felt it was dynamic. I wasn't just going to be statically worse here, and so I was cool. I mean, I was hoping for d5 not to be played, but if it was played, it wasn't like I'm gambling too much, let's say. But in the end, my opponent plays bishop g2, which not only doesn't play d5, but it also puts the bishop on a square that I think is not best. So I think the best square for the bishop is d3 because like I'm going to have this pawn on d5. The bishop on g2 is just going to be staring into concrete, like this concrete wall on d5. That's not going to move. Like this bishop's not going to be active at all. And on something like knight c3, d5, cd, knight d5, this bishop actually belongs much better. I mean, maybe you can throw bishop d5 in, bishop d3, potentially. The bishop's just better on d3. Castles, castles. And I don't know, like white's I feel like black still has some problems to solve here. Rook fc1 is coming. Queenside development isn't so easy. I mean, like, okay, so knight d7, some structure like this, like, I feel like it's very hard for white to ever get outplayed here. Like bishop a6, stopping rook c8, rook fc1 comes. You can double on the c file. You can even triple on the c file. Yeah, I feel like for me as the higher rated player, I would be hard pressed to win such a position here. Knight c3, I might even have to consider just like delaying or not even playing d5 or something like that. I guess like some of like castles is also possible. You know, d5, I have e5 with the same idea, knight g6, but knight c3, maybe I'll castle. If bishop g2, then I play d5, and if bishop, um, maybe I can go something like c6 first, try to get in d5 and recapture just with the pawn, keep a pair of knights on the board. Something like this is possible, but I think it's already quite clear that maybe you can start throwing the h pawn down the board. But basically, like this is a better version of the game for white. Then yeah, this is just like a better version of the game. So bishop g2. I'm very happy to play this move d5 here. Um, Played it in less than a minute. f4. And I took a little think here, 5 minutes, and I played this move c6. I had a few candidates in mind. Obviously, first is castles, but I wasn't so sure about this structure. So first of all, if e takes d5, so this is something normal like castles. I don't know. I wasn't so sure about this because it's like I have to go c6 at some point to keep this pawn on d5 protected. I'm going to maneuver this knight to d6, but then what? Like I figure I can stick this rook on c1. Mm, I don't know. This knight eventually might try to find itself. Maybe something like queen d3, knight d2, knight f3 makes a lot of sense. Actually, queen d3 actually makes a ton of sense right now. Stopping that at 5, trying to get this knight to f3. Um, and then I don't know. I feel like at some point after I make all the natural moves, like I'm just at a loss for a plan. I felt like in a structure like this where I take back with the e pawn. I guess eventually again I can try for c5, but then I'll have hanging pawns in the center. Could be good, could be bad. Most likely bad just because there's less minor pieces on the board, so they're probably going to be more of a weakness. But again, I don't think I'm worse here with black. Maybe white slightly preferable. It's not going to be anything serious, but I just felt maybe I'm hard pressed here to really come up with some sort of winning plan if white just like sits around and plays normal moves. And really, white's moves are quite easy. Rook c2, rook c1. I don't know. So CD5, knight d5, knight c3, kind of same deal, right? Like it might even be worse with a pair of knights off. Like this knight takes d5 is coming, and we get the same structure where like I wasn't really sure that I had a plan. And here probably like the c5 break in the center would be like worse, just because there's more minor pieces off the board. Um, so this is something I wanted to avoid. Another thing I looked at was this move knight bc6, threatening potentially to take on c4. And so I looked at this line cd5, knight d5, knight c3. The point is, I want to play this move knight ce7 to keep a piece on d5. But after knight d5, castles, castles, rook c1. I wasn't really so sure. Like, if anything, like black's not better here. Like, if anything, white's slightly better, but still probably not. After something like queen d6, if you really wanted, you could take on d5. Queen d5, rook c7 is, I mean, very likely not going to win this. In e d5, like I'm always going to have this weakness on c7, and I pretty much have given up all winning chances. Like against someone 400 points lower rated. This is not something I wanted to go for. So I ended up deciding on this move c6 because I figured structurally I want to take back on d5 with the c pawn. And what this does is solely thinking about weaknesses here. Like in all the previous lines that you saw, my c pawn was a weakness. So I figured, you know what? Like if I'm gonna recapture on d5 with a pawn, I might as well be the c pawn, just get rid of my weakness, and so I have no weaknesses in my position. Um, and I'm also threatening potentially at some point to take on c4 and keep this pawn, like if white lets me at their opportune moment. So first castles happens. I think about dc4 briefly, but I think after knight a3, like white's just winning the pawn back immediately, like b5, knight b5. Otherwise, like castles takes. It's not really the position I'm going for. C6 is weak. I mean, d4 is sure, d4 is weak in return, but even still, like I doubt I'm much worse here. Like I'm probably like plus equals type position, maybe not even that, but again, like I felt like white's moves become quite easy. Like c6 is weak, and it's more clear here what white's plan is than what happened in the game. So castles, I just simply castled. By the way, I'm going to save this game before I like my computer freezes or whatever, and it just like doesn't let me save. PGN, we're going to name this Cherry Blossom 2024. White was Diao, Matthew Go Diao, and black was me. Cherry Blossom 2024 1. Hello White was like 1978 or 2401 or so. And round 1. 542. Annotator is me. All right, have this game saved just in case. So castles. White plays this move, and this is a move that I thought was again. It's one of those moves where I can't really point to it and say this lost the game, but it's one of those moves that I just like instantly knew. It's just like my opponent is not comfortable with this position. He does not know what he's doing, and he spent 11 minutes making this move for d1. And to me, it just felt like like what does this move do, right? Like the rook doesn't belong on d1. If you ask yourself the three questions for white, what is my worst place piece? Probably, dude, all of white's pieces are not great. Rook a1. So what? So this rook on a1 is going to go to c1. Potentially both rooks will double on the c file. This knight might go to c3, maybe somewhere else. I think the answer to the worst place piece is it's probably both minor pieces. And I think if White really asked himself the question, what do I want out of my position? What is my worst place piece, etc., etc., like you come to the conclusion, I think that this knight belongs on e5 or somewhere there. This queen's not really great on d2 either, so maybe something like queen d3 followed by knight d2 to f3 makes a lot of sense. Um, Another option, just because I mean, dude, if you're gonna go rook d1, you might as well go rook c1, right? And then I think something that makes a lot of sense is bishop f1 on the next move, and trying to take and go potentially bishop b5, or obviously if this knight on b8 moves, or like bishop a6 to stop the rook from coming to c8. I think moves like these are like less intuitive, but they have more of an understanding of what's going on in the position, and it would have been harder for me to, I think, maneuver as like freely as I did in the game. So castles, rook d1. I think my opponent's point is still I can't take on c4 because of knight a3. I'm not too worried about that. Like, I go knight d7. My opponent told me after the game, his point, like, I figured, like, dude, if you're gonna go rook d1, like, okay, let me explain further. So knight d7, my opponent took on d5 here, because I am potentially threatening to take on c4. My opponent told me, well, like, once you put the knight on d7, like, it can't go to c6 anymore. So, I guess it's kind of a concession. But even if you take here, I mean, maybe I'll put the knight on c6, right? But it really doesn't matter too much. I think what matters is this knight is going to d6. And from there. Like this knight can be on c6, it can be on f6, but this knight on d6 is the important piece, I think. Um, I don't know. I just felt like even here, probably there's a better move than taking. Like obviously taking solidifies the structure. I have no weaknesses anymore. White has this weakness on d4. This bishop's not great. And my knights are always moving around. I was very happy with my position. And already I was up like 35 minutes on the clock. My opponent took like 16 minutes to take on d5, even after taking 11 minutes to play rook d1. So I was quite happy with my position here already. I'm sure there's a better move than c takes d5. b3 comes to mind. And then just like keeping this tension for as long as possible. At some point I'm going to go knight f6, knight c3, knight f5, knight d6, and I like my position, but it's not the end of the world for white. It's probably just equal. Um, but after cd5, cd5, I think I would attach. The engine's going to say it's equal, but I think like maybe equals plus is fair. I'm not going to attach it because the engine's definitely going to say it's equal here, and it is still objectively equal, I assume. But I don't know. I think black's the one already having all the fun. Save, just in case. Rook d1, knight d7. b3 is a move. I assume queen d3 still is a move. Knight d2, knight f3 is the idea. Can't be so bad, right? cd5, cd5. My opponent plays knight c3. I go knight f6. I thought about knight f5, but I wasn't sure what to do on bishop h3. Idea knight d6 f5. And this should be an accomplishment for white. Like he's getting rid of one of his weaknesses. And if I don't go knight d6, something like g6, you might as well swap off. And I'm not so sure how well I'm doing in this position. Like I'm certainly not worse or anything, but I don't know how much of my winning chances have just dissipated after this trade. So I figured I have nothing to lose. Actually, so I did take a while because it's just like if white plays something normal like rook ac1, knight d6, I would prefer to spend the tempo not having have not have not having had played. Am I stupid? I would rather have spent the tempo not having played knight f6. There we go, I think. Let me know in the comments. Oh. Ooh, 11-11. Make a wish. But anyway, the point is like instead of knight f6, like I want to go b5 next move, I think. And knight might go to b6. Probably not, because like b3 is a thing, but b5, queen b6, like these are more important tempi than knight f6, where like my worst placed piece certainly right now is not this knight on d7, and so I can spend my time here improving my major pieces if I'm allowed to get this in. So something like, I don't know, b3, b5. I was looking at like bishop f1, queen b6. Like I think I'm happy here. I think I'm happy here. Yeah, but I just didn't know what to play on bishop h3, and I wasn't like queen f6 I considered, but then like what next, right? Like I wasn't so sure. But so I just played knight f6, keep things simple. I'm like, you know what? Tempi don't matter too much in this position. Close position, just make sure white has no counterplay, and I'm gonna do the shuffle here with the knight with these knights, and eventually create some weaknesses, and I'll play my opponent. So knight c3, knight f6. Rook c1, natural move. Knight f5. Want to go to d6. Played that quite quickly. Just trying to look at where I spent time. Queen d3. And queen d3, I feel like my opponent started trying to go for tactics here. He started playing hope chess at some point. I don't like queen d3. I think bishop f1 makes a lot more sense. Worst placed piece for white is his bishop on g2. It belongs on either b5 or a6. Simple enough. What would I have played? I think knight e4 is an option here potentially. The engine doesn't like it according to this square being yellow, but it's an option. Nope, no, it's not because it's d5, right? Yeah, okay, I did see that. What was I gonna do? I forget what I was gonna do. Rook c8 is possible, so that bishop a6 I have rook c7. Knight d6 is possible. I think I was gonna go knight d6. because bishop a6, I have like knight e4 or something. I also have knight c4 as a possibility. Um, I think I was just going to try to find some smart move here, honestly, which I don't know if it exists, but that's what I was going to attempt to do. I wonder if I have. Oh man, this would be cool if it worked. I doubt it works. I was looking at some line like this where the knight is trapped on d6, but unfortunately, I think this is a move. Um, yeah, yeah. I don't know. So I guess knight c4 is possible. What do I play here? I can go here and take back with the pawn. Probably queen d7. Nope, not that. D7 is smart. Threaten b5. Rook d8, knight e4 in the air. Maybe white has time to play f3 here just to stop knight e4. Maybe there's some other smart moves. So queen d3 here makes a lot of sense, trying to get knight b5 in. I don't know. I felt like this was just like a more, well, just like a smarter way to play for white. Just the bishop on g2 does nothing, just put it on a6. Instead, queen d3 just blocks the bishop from getting to a6 even. I think my opponent was hoping for rook c8, knight takes d5, which, like, I'm not worse after this move. I can always, like, take and equalize, but it's not what I'm going for. Because knight takes d5, the point is, if knight takes, rook takes c8, queen takes c8, bishop takes d5. I can also play rook d8. Take it. Whoa, wait, hold on. I can just take back, bro. Bro. Huh. Okay, well, I missed that. So knight takes d5 has to be just like a blunder. Um, would I have played it if I saw it? I did not see a queen takes c8. I'm protecting the knight. Would I have played it? Threatening rook c4, kind of. No, I'm not really threatening. Am I? Because then like knight e2 followed by b3 happens. And I have to give that rook up anyway. Um, yeah, I don't know, because I actually want the f8 rook does less than the a8 rook. So I actually want my f8 rook on c8. So I really don't think I would have played it anyways. I did spend some time here though. Maybe you just go like b3 anyways. Then like bishop f1 next, like b5 is in the air. I still prefer black here, but there isn't knight takes d5 like I thought there was. Um, anyway, queen d3, I played queen d7. I felt like d7 was the correct square for my queen. Because I want to leave this d6 square for my knight. I obviously want to get my queen out of the way, and I want to play rook c8. I think like if I go queen e7 here, that just hangs knight takes d5. Pretty sure. Trying to look for the green square. Yep, there we go. Yeah, that's a thing. So queen d7 I felt was the right square for my queen. White plays b3. I go rook fc8. Yeah, even on like some move like b3, my opponent spent 8 minutes here. He's already down to 20 minutes, and I had like a 40-minute time advantage. So very happy here. Rook fc8. I can go knight d6 at any point, but I figure like I should keep the pressure on d4, like if I can. But so rook fc8. And my opponent plays this move rook c2, which I also felt was inaccurate. I was hoping for this move queen b5. Unfortunately, I think it's bad in more ways than one. What I was going to play was takes. And I mean, if here I'm up a piece, otherwise, like this has to be like winning for me. I don't know. I'll just give this up and then like start coming with the knights. And otherwise, the problem is that okay, this also loses, I think, to this, and like d4 will fall. Or this knight might fall to 98. And something like a4 makes sense. And I thought bishop f1 made the most sense. Just get this bishop on a better square, honestly. Um, on rook c7, maybe knight b5 makes sense. Maybe queen b5 now makes sense, just because there's extra protection on the queen. But I thought this was a more prudent move. Instead, my opponent played. What did he play? Rook c2. He played rook c2. This is kind of a clever move. The point is that on if I play this move rook c7, he has this move knight takes d5 if I'm not careful. Knight takes d5. He has at least bishop takes d5, and queen takes d5, rook takes c7, rook takes c2, bishop takes a8. Actually, let me just put these on the board. And ed5, take, right? So the tactics all work out for white. And knight takes c5. If I take, there's at least this. Probably just taking is better. But yeah, that's something I had to not fall for. But I feel like rook c2, like sure, it makes sense. You're doubling the rooks, but I just have this move rook c6, which is like the same thing. Like I'm doubling the rooks, but on knight takes d5, I just take back, and you have nothing because I'm always taking back with the queen. Here I just take back with the queen, and there's nothing. So after rook c6, like I felt this inclusion of moves was just good for me. Rook dc1, rook c8 happens. Um, Instead of rook c2, yeah, I think bishop f1 was good. Let me attach a question mark to queen e5. I think, yeah, honestly, just like at some point, bishop f1 has to be played, right? I don't know. I eventually after here, rook a8, my opponent did play bishop f1, but which is probably the best move, I think. But already it just seems a little too late. Like I have already gotten what I want out of the position. Like my knights are dancing, d4 is kind of weak, fighting for the c file. Like I have no problems in the position, and I'm really pushing for the advantage here if I don't have it already. Um, yeah, bishop f1, and I figured, okay, I don't have enough pressure on this d4 pawn. Can't move my queen because like when I move my queen, I think I'm mostly hanging something. Like queen e7, knight d5, for example, I don't want to hang. Queen d6, I didn't like knight b5, maybe. I think. But in general, I felt like okay, it's time for knight d6. Like I don't need this pressure right now on this d4 pawn, and I'm also kind of threatening to play rook c7, queen c8 if I can get it in. Potentially also threatening to play knight de4 and take back with the d pawn to just like really try to hammer down on this d4 weakness. So my opponent, by the way, who is in like massive. Oh, is that true? No, bishop f1. I played this move g6. Psych. Okay, so I figured like it's not time yet to relinquish pressure over the d pawn. um, yeah, g6 just a useful move, giving me space to go king g7. Knight d6 also possible, but I figured like yeah, I don't know, probably also fine, but like not necessary yet. So g6. My opponent plays this move queen d1, which I thought was like quite astute for being in time pressure. By the way, my opponent's already down to like 3 minutes here, and I still have 44. So I was very optimistic about my chances at this point. Queen d2 is the natural move to try to get like bishop b5 in, and there's also knight b5 here, which I was hoping for, but I forget why. No, it was just because I take everything and I go a6, right, and then d4 falls. I think. Yeah, this doesn't work because this is protected. This has to be good. Yeah, so I was hoping for knight b5. I was also looking at queen d2. And I think this is worse just because like when this knight potentially moves, like I am taking on c2 with tempo. So if I go something like knight d6, for example, I think knight b5 just hangs a piece to rook takes c2, and this loses. Um, and also like I have knight e4 jumping and hitting the queen with tempo again. So I felt like queen d1 was actually like quite a nice move, probably a better square for the queen. Bishop b5 is threatened, so I do go knight d6. Bishop a6. After the game, my opponent thought like maybe like this isn't the best move. You should go a4 because eventually the bishop got stuck on a6 in the game, but I wasn't so sure that bishop a6 was a mistake. I thought it was still probably fine. A4. Might go rook c7. I might go knight d4 and take back here because I'm not hanging anything. I don't think Because takes takes, here I have takes, and if here I have takes, takes, like queen d8, I guess. Although, I wonder if that's what I want. Probably I can be patient. Probably I can play rook 8 c7, threatening queen c8. Queen c8, if I get that in, then I go like knight e4, and I'm actually winning material there. Um, yeah, this might have been what I would have done. Then knight b5 would be very similar to the game. What would I do? I could just probably take, knight f5 like the game. And I do have a6 coming. So this has to be fairly good for me. I mean, dude, I have to be much better here. So bishop a6 happens, rook c7. I am threatening b5, which I was hoping my opponent would miss. Like something like king g2, I think b5 just wins the game on the spot. Um, yeah, because like knight b5 takes. I'm winning this bishop, so that's more than enough material. Otherwise, like takes. Here I'm up a piece, or here I'm also up a piece. I was trying to calculate, so king g2 is like a non-move. Queen d3 would be like a more natural move. I was trying to calculate if b5 works here. I did not think it did because of bishop takes b5. And so for example, knight b5. If knight b5, take, and I'm still up a piece, but I thought queen b5 here. I did not see how I was going to break through. And obviously, if I don't break through, actually, no, I saw queen c8 here. I did see queen c8, followed by knight e4. I did see this. And I thought I might win material here, but I wasn't, even then, I wasn't so sure. Because I thought, like, white sacks the exchange in some smart way. It's like queen d3. I guess I want queen b4, which makes a lot of sense. Because knight e4, I think, like, you take on e4. Wait, hold up. So, do you have something smart here? No, was I thinking knight d5? I was thinking knight d5. I remember seeing this position. Knight d5, take, check. And I wasn't so sure I was better here at all. I might be. I might be. But I remember I was like, okay, this is something I see, something I might not go for. But in the end, after queen d3, yeah, I probably don't play b5 here. I don't think it wins. Like I was calculating all this queen c8 stuff. And I remember thinking like might win. I'll look further into it, but if I don't see it, like I'm not going to go for this position. I'm just gonna go play some natural move like king g7 or whatever, like knight e4 maybe. In the end, my opponent played a4, which stops the b5 threat. Um, Probably a good move. And I played this move knight fe4, which I actually thought was quite nice. So the point is, I mean, obviously I'm threatening the knight. The knight e4, I was going to play this move de4. And this d4 pawn all of a sudden becomes very weak. And I have knight f5 coming. And I think, like, in terms of just the minor piece ending, like, I clearly have the better minor piece, and white has, like, the only weakness, I think, basically on the board. So after all the rooks get traded, queen and knight works better than queen and bishop. And so I was going to be, I was fairly happy with my winning chances in this ending. And so with the time ticking down, my opponent played this move knight b5, which is, I thought was fine, not necessarily a mistake. Takes. And I was deciding here between two things. In the game, I ended up playing rook takes c2. But knight takes b5 was also on my radar, with takes and queen c8 taking over the c file. And again, I have the better minor piece ending here, but after bishop d3, I wasn't sure whether this would be enough to win, even with my opponent in time pressure. And actually, like my opponent being in time pressure was kind of a factor too, because I figured like this position is just easier to defend than the other position if they are at the same objective value. Like I saw this line queen c3, takes d5, and I just like wasn't sure that I'd be able to press here. So I'm actually quite happy with my decision to go knight f5 here. Kind of just like want to see the green arrow. Man, it says the position's equal, so I probably like screwed it up somewhere. But I don't know. I was like, I really thought this position wasn't so easy for white to defend. Like d4 is weak. Queen e7 to b4 is a threat. Queen e7 to f6. Maybe knight e d6 is a threat. And the critical line, queen c8, take, 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 knight d2. I'm just gonna be up a pawn here, and I think I just like more or less probably win the game. Is that true? Do you have like something like this? Oh boy, you might, you might. No, I think I take. I go knight c5. Do you have bishop b5 here? No, but then like okay, I do think I'm still pressing here, but maybe there is something better for white to play here. My opponent played king g2, which I thought was just like a lazy. Well, I mean, okay, he had no time, but it's not really the move you want to be making, I think, to try to have hopes of defending the position. I thought he should have played queen d3 with the idea of knight c3 on the next move, and tries just trying to trade a knight off. Even though this gives me the c file, so it doesn't actually give me the c file because I can't go queen c6 because of knight a7. I think I was going to go queen e7, knight c3, but like for example, if I take here, like white's slightly worse, but bishop d3 is coming. Like it's going to be defendable, I assume. And otherwise, I have to find some smart move here. Maybe the smart move is queen b4, idea knight e4, queen e1, and I'll take back with the pawn. But regardless, I feel like queen d3 was a better defensive track because after king g2, I play this move queen e7, and I'm all over the place. Like queen b4, queen f6, like this d4 pawn's potentially falling. So after queen e7, white goes queen d3. I play this move queen b4, and white is just completely stuck. Like this bishop can move, but like what is it doing? This knight is stuck to the d4 pawn. Eventually in the game, my opponent took on a7, but otherwise I might go knight e d6 next move. I might just go h5 h4 next move. You know, just like start create more weaknesses on the king side. Queen e1's in the air, and with seconds ticking down, my opponent took on a7. I take on d4, and this b3 pawn is on pre. I'm also threatening knight c5, and my opponent plays this move bishop c4, which is not a bad resource, I guess. And here I was kind of just like counting the wins I had during the game. Like I took my time because I didn't want to screw it up, but I spent 7 minutes here before I played this move queen c5, which can't be bad. I think. So if the move I thought was best here is bishop a6, and honestly, I think I would have considered just going back and playing this move knight c5, queen d4, knight b3, which I think should win. Like I just take back on c4 next, and that should be GG. Unless I'm like really missing something like knight c6 here, but then knight d4. Nope. Yeah, no. This is what I think I was planning to play eventually. But I figured, I can give my opponent a chance to screw up here. I was also looking at knight f5, but after bishop a6, I also was unsure where the win was. Um, Also, bishop a6, I was looking at this move b5, but then again, after knight b5, I wasn't clear yet where my win was either. Like I can take, but I didn't see a clear win yet. So I figured like after queen c5, I can give my opponent a chance to not find bishop a6, just like a chance to go wrong here. And I think he did. He just played this move knight b5. And here I really was just like counting the number of wins I had. Like I could have gone knight f5, I could have gone knight c6. This like so something like knight c6, queen e2. Um just like takes, honestly. And then yeah, this is just like GG. Also like same thing with knight f5, really. Uh Yeah, something like queen e2, take. I figured this is just completely winning. In the end, I just decided like knight takes b5. It's just like, I mean, all roads lead to Rome, right? So knight takes b5, bishop takes b5, queen f2. My opponent plays king h3, it speeds up the process, but on king h1, I was just going to go queen b2. Threatening both knight f2 and knight c5. This b pawn's going to fall. I'm just going to be up two clean pawns. with my king being completely safe, and I think this is time to resign for white. On king h3, I did play this move queen g1, threatening both knight f2, which is actually unstoppable. Like something like queen e2 can happen, but I'm just going check and check, and this will be mate. Right? I mean, I'm just winning the queen. So after queen g1, my opponent resigned. And let's see what the engine says. All right, back to the beginning. Whew. All right, so it does think d5 is quite good for white here, but anything other than d5, and we are being chilling. Knight f6, yeah, I guess knight f6 for next time, right? It's knight e7, d5. I was gonna go e5. Queen g5. Holy shit. Well, actually, it doesn't recommend that anymore. Really? Like, how good is this, bro? Knight c3, castles, bishop d3 at once. Yeah, but so what, right? You just go h4, and I guess this is really good for you. You castle queenside, you're just throwing pawns. Like, I mean, I guess, right? Shit, I guess. F4, I also thought. I mean, d6 is kind of wild. D6 makes a lot of sense actually, but it is still kind of wild. Here, yeah, I didn't think this was too bad for me. Maybe it is d6. Yeah, man, maybe this is just not great for me. I saw I could go c6, d6 knight f5, but c6 knight c3 makes a lot of sense. Castle bishop g2. I knew this wasn't exactly what I wanted, but it was always some sort of backup option. Okay, I guess d5 was the way to go for my opponent. Bishop g2 is definitely a question mark. He just strays for no reason. Even knight c3, I mentioned, was a better move. I do go d5 here. Takes. Bishop b5 is apparently like not great to throw in. But yeah, I do remember this position from my opening round. I had like knight e7 in here or something. Um, because like castles, I mean castles also fine, but something like this is just like white's having all the fun, I guess, just piling on the c pawn, and the d pawn is really not that much of a weakness. So yeah, we can attach the plus equals to this, I think, comfortably. But what did we have instead? Takes, bishop d3, and knight e7 is a possibility. And if you have to castle queenside, like good, go for it, man. Like we will have fun in opposite sides castling. So knight c7 is the move. Unclear. Promote that variation. Plan plays bishop g2. Very happy to see. d5 played immediately. f4. Boom. I like to see this move c6 at the top. Knight b6 also up there. So let's see. Take knight c3, knight c7. Takes. Yeah, it mentions this position's equal, and I knew it was equal, but it's just like what am I playing for? Like it's just equal. There's not as much chance to be outplaying my opponent now. Like the most likely result, even against someone more rated, is just a draw. So I like this move c6. Castles. Shit, rook d1's the top move. I was criticizing it, but just like I don't know, like in conjunction with CD5 though, it doesn't make sense. I think that's my point. Like if you go B3 here and make Rook D1 make sense, like that's fine, dude. But if you're gonna go Rook D1 and spend another 10 minutes and take on D5, then that's not fine. You know? Uh I felt like Queen D3 made a lot of sense, which it does. I was also thinking Knight C3 I could take on C4, get away with it, which I can. And yeah, B3. Yeah, I saw B3. We analyzed this, and this is just simply around equal. Wants to put the knight on c2 even. Yeah, dude, I guess. Why not? So CD5 happens. Knight c3. And all moves are kind of equal. So knight f5. I did not like this move bishop h3, and I think for good reason. Here it is kind of just equal. So knight d6, there's this move f5. Um, and if queen f6, that just like doesn't make sense. Probably just queen d3 at the very least. And just like, what is the queen doing on f6? Apparently it just likes knight b5 also. And I think on g6, bishop takes f5, gf5. White is never worse here. And something like knight f6, oops, takes. Like this is just symmetrical. Like white will very likely draw this. Okay, so I like my move knight f6. It even wants knight b8 to c6. Interesting. That's something I didn't consider, but because I didn't really think it mattered whether the knight was on f6 or c6. But I guess we'll look at more of that later when we're at home. So again, rook c1. I figured like bishop f1's always going to be the best move here. And I was looking at the game during the game at this a6 b5 just to make sure the bishop doesn't come to a6. And I'm very happy to see that at the top. I was also looking at queen d7. Um, Probably not here, actually. I don't think I would have played queen d7 here, but a6 here, I think I would have played, which is nice to see because I get in b5, queen d6. And if a4, I'm just going queen d6, and this is weak now. Okay, so rook c1, and I go knight f5, rook c8 possible. Doesn't really matter, I don't think. Knight f5, queen d3. Yeah, rook c8 was possible because knight takes d5 just loses to this. But on b3, man, maybe this was possible to play, yeah. Maybe bishop h3 though. Actually, that's kind of interesting. Because now knight d6, f5. Okay. Regardless, queen d7 is near the top. g6 also makes a ton of sense. Just trying to improve my position, create left for my king. Queen d3, yeah, queen d3 I did criticize, and I said bishop f1, likely best move. And I was going to go knight d6, I think I said. Maybe not best, but yeah, knight e4 I don't think I was going to go because of d5. Correct. Let's actually just get rid of that. Knight e8 to d6 makes sense. Rook c8 also makes sense. But on bishop a6, it just wants knight e4. I was gonna go rook c7 if I played this. Also equal, but yeah, white survives better with bishop f1. Now after queen d3, it starts getting into a zone where maybe black starts to be objectively better. Queen d7 I liked. b3. Rook fc8. Again, I thought bishop f1 should be played. Look at that. The eval stays equal after bishop f1. Queen b5 I was going to take. This does win. And on rook c2, yeah, I did not like rook c2 as a move. b5 maybe? Interesting. Or a6 b5. I was never so sure, but on bishop h3 it wants me to go back to e7. I don't know. A6 b5 I can respect, but rook c6 is right behind, so I don't even think rook c6 is worse. Like I'm just trying to double the rooks. And here bishop f1 is the only move to not just be worse. Eventually my opponent finds it. Play this move g6, which is just a small improvement on the position. Queen d6 I did not like. Knight b5, good. Queen e7 blunders, knight takes d5, good. And knight d6 I felt was unnecessary yet. So g6 I think is a good move. Brigade c7 also possible. How does it want me to play here? I guess just g6 here. Yeah, the same spirit also. Queen d1, I praised it as a move. It is a good move. Because queen d2, I do have, yeah, I do have knight e4 immediately here. This is what I saw. And takes. Because bishop b5, rook c2 wins a piece. Otherwise, takes. Bishop b5 also wins a piece here, rook c1. So I thought takes, and then I am just better here, black. Because this is the structure that I want. Just like the e4 pawn is weak. Or the d4 pawn is weak, and I have the knight versus bishop. Okay, so that's good to know. And queen d1, best move. Nice. By my opponent. Knight d6, pretty much the only move, I think. Just to stop bishop b4, or the only reasonable move. My opponent criticized bishop a6 after the game. I said I wasn't so sure it was bad. He wanted a4 instead, but I do think, yeah, I wasn't so sure why. Like, I think I was misremembering. Like, I did go knight fe4 in the game, and this was the knight jump I did want. So knight e4, d4. And I guess, like, I played a win here still. Like, I am very slightly better. Opponents in time pressure. I have chances. Rook hc7, bad due to bishop b5. And knight e4. Wow. I respect it. All right. There we go. That is a cool tactic. All right. Queen b7 makes a lot of sense. But I think I would have played knight fe4. I'm not sure why I kept mentioning knight d4. Like this just loses to bishop b5. I would not have played that during the game. I was just like kind of tripping. Knight fe4 is the knight I would have moved. Let's just like promote all of these lines. Yeah, that's very easy to see. So knight d6, bishop a6, rook c7, threatening b5. And a4 is the only move. Curious on queen d3 if so. I'm right that b5 doesn't win. I think I would have played something else. Knight a4 also still makes a ton of sense. It's what I was going for during the game. It's what I potentially would have gone for again. Let's make sure king g2 loses to b5, which it does. Nice. Queen d3, b5, takes. Queen c8, knight takes d5, perfect. And oh yeah, here no, you gotta take first. Otherwise, I just like win. And then yeah, here is unclear, which I did. Not that unclear, which I saw during the game. A4 happens, and here knight fe4, great move. I think only move to really keep the pressure on. My opponent panics and plays this move knight b5, which is not great. Knight e4, I was going to go d4, and I thought bishop c4 was the way to defend. I did think this during the game. And just clog the c file, keep major pieces on the board, and hopefully d4 is not that big of a weakness in that case. Otherwise, if takes, I thought my advantage would have been quite decent here, which it is. Um, this was the only way to keep equality. Okay, knight b5 happens. Takes. Nice, I made the right decision. This is also a bit better for me, but again, yeah, not as hard for white to defend. And this is, oh, apparently queen d3 just wins. I did miss that completely. Although even here, it's fairly obvious that it wins. Okay. But even here, okay, so king f1, I guess is the move to play apparently. And this is a draw. Play take, knight f5, which I'm proud of finding, because that is the way to put max pressure. Queen c8, take, knight d2. Okay, this does win. Take. a6 takes, and knight c5. Nice, okay. If b4, we just go a5, which I saw. And this d4 pawn is going to fall. And king g2 I did not like. Yeah, I did criticize this move after the game, and it is bad. What did I think was best? I thought queen d3 was the best way to try to defend. Apparently I can go queen c6 because of what? Queen b2. And I guess I pick up b3. Nice. Okay. And that does win. Okay, I missed that during the game. Might have seen it. Who knows? I didn't calculate too far. But something like, ooh, even this was not great. Yeah, queen b4 is a smart move. So what does it want instead? It wants f3. F3 makes sense, but I would have been happy to see it still because I'm like I want to go knight d6 anyway to get rid of the defender of the d4 pawn. So something like takes. Queen c3. Okay, this is kind of the configuration, I guess, that white wanted from knight c3 takes. And here, yeah, white has hopes to defend. Something like h5 makes a lot of sense to me. Equals plus, but not at all decisive. Probably what my opponent should have done. King g2, lazy move. Queen e7. I also considered h5 to go h4 because h5 h4. I think here I just take right. Yeah. Um, I also considered this. I just didn't think it was fast enough. But static position like this, like a move like h5 can't be bad. My advantage is just always going to be there. So I like queen e7 best though. And my opponent panics in time pressure, plays queen d3. This apparently exists, but not a concern because I hide on h7 with my king. So yeah, I'm just doing very, very well here. So queen d3, queen b4, knight a7. What else is there to do? Knight d4, bishop c4. What else is there to do? Queen c5. Knight f5 I also considered, but no, bishop a6. I have knight c5 here, which I saw. So it was knight f5, bishop b5, which I didn't like. Here I can go knight c5 and pick up b3, but I figured queen c5 makes a lot of sense. Like choosing between wins here, I think. Queen c5, bishop a6 was best. I wonder if this. Oh my god! Oh my god! Okay. I feel like I'm lucky I didn't play into this then, cause good lord. Takes, check, and I'm not winning here. Go figure. Um, there was a reason I didn't play it right away. Like I wasn't so sure that it won, and in fact it does not. So what would I have played here a second time around? Like I think it is quite possible I would not have gone knight c5 the second time around. So if you go bishop a6 here, I was calculating all sorts of stuff, right? Knight f5, knight c2. Apparently knight c6. No, not knight c6. Knight c2 actually makes a lot of sense to go knight b4. So queen e2. Something like knight b4, I guess. Something like queen c3 makes a lot of sense. And then just take on b3. No, I mean, knight e1's a threat too. I mean, I hope I would have seen this and not played um, knight c5 takes b3. But yeah, I got lucky my opponent plays knight b5, so makes the conversion really quite easy for me. Take on b5. Anything was good here. Knight c6 just wins. Knight f5 just wins. And takes b5 also just wins. Takes, check. And king h3, queen g1 is just resigns, and king h1, queen b2 would have also just been resigns. So, yeah, good enough for me. And yeah, looks like we played like a decently clean game. What were our mistakes? Okay, after which point did we definitely not make any mistakes? So after, I feel like after this happened, we just made no more mistakes for the rest of the game. Actually, our conversion was like really clean here. I mean, we made a potential mistake in that thinking preemptively we might have gone knight c5 here, but nothing actually happened to the game. So, okay. Past that point, we didn't make any mistakes. So, I guess like after this point, we played perfectly. Even still, like, man, we didn't do much wrong in this game. I remember like, what was it, like knight b8 was possible here, but nothing's a mistake. If anything, it's just like the opening, right? Potentially in the opening we could have played better. Just knight f6 here, right? And after bishop g2, d5, I like c6. I like everything I did this game. I think we played quite a smooth game. And yeah, that was round one. Nice, nice, nice. Okay, yeah. See you guys after round two.